So, this video today, I'm just going to go into my events and my experiences I've had that resulted in me realizing that, oh, right, so I'm never going to be like the kind of famous musician that everyone else figured I would be. And going into why that may be and things like that, but also why I don't want to go down that kind of path. So, and the reason I just wanted to make this video is because I've never really had the opportunity, or maybe I've just never felt it's been the right time to talk about what it was like when I first started doing music. Because I was always told that talking about the things that happened to me at the hands of other people would stop my career from happening, when it was actually the opposite. Because I don't feel like any career that you have that entails you being treated poorly is a career worth having. That's my personal opinion for me. Anyway, I started doing music in 2012, and I'll do another video on how I came onto that, because I didn't do any songwriting or guitar playing really before 2012, and really haven't, I just sang other people's songs really to myself. But when I started, I was constantly told that I would have to, put up with quite a lot of abusive stuff to get onto the next rung of the ladder. And there's a classic example. I remember before I could even play guitar properly, I had a guitarist, and we played at a gig in Crystal Palace. And a man came up to us and said that he could get us loads and loads of gigs, but he was really slimy towards me. And my guitarist noticed. And on the way back to the train station, I remember saying to this guitarist of mine, who I knew really well by this point, I said, I don't want to work with him. And he said, why not? And I said, well, you saw the way he was with me. Like, he barely spoke to me. And when he did, it was to make a slimy comment about me. I can't even remember what he said, but I know that me and my guitarist both noticed it. And my guitarist turned around to me and said, so you're going to throw away opportunity because of your morals? And I turned around to him at the train station at Crystal Palace and I said, yes, 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 that's exactly it. I said, I'm going to throw away that opportunity because of how he treated me. Not because of my morals, but because of how he spoke to me. And really, when I look back on that moment, it was such a pinnacle moment of where I was going to go and how I was going to lead when doing my music for the next, gosh, how many years? Because, the difference between me and my guitarist is that my guitarist, his rent was paid for by his mother, and he didn't have to work, and I had to work. And that was a theme that I noticed through doing music, is that the majority of people, all of the musicians, all of the people I met through music, none of them were in my situation where they had no family and they had no support. And I was doing this completely on my own. And so, because I was doing it on my own, and because I knew that, for example, if I wanted to pay my rent, if I wanted to pay my bills, if I wanted to have a new instrument, it would be up to me to advocate for myself so incredibly, so violently sure of that, that it would mean I could not and I would not be compromising on my worth, on my value in music. And that was, I am so proud of myself that even but way back then, I was like, no, I'm not doing that. If that person is being vile or saying disgusting things to me, and you've noticed it, because the thing is, everyone notices it when someone's being horrible to someone else. They just don't say anything because they're worried it's going to happen to them. People like to protect their own selves, And the way that I was protecting myself and protecting people I worked with was to stand up and go, I don't like that. Because I've always known that standing up against abusive behavior happening to you also is against abusive behavior that they're going to do to other people. Unfortunately, judicial systems don't work like that, and that's not how the mentality stands for other people, because you know, I think a lot of us have been mongered into thinking that if you stand up for yourself, then you are going to invite more hate down your way, and that does happen. That's not a lie, but that is again because people are frightened of people who call it out. Anyway, so as I was going on, and eventually my guitarist left to another country, and I had to relearn guitar in 2012 because I couldn't play, and then I started going out to open mics on my own. I started going to like local bars near where I worked. I worked in the West End in a theatre, and I started going to the open mics there. And what I would do is, as a solo artist, just walk into live music venues and say I want a gig. And they would always advise me to go to the open mic because they wanted to vet to see if I was good. And I remember the very first place I ever played was a place called the Chocolate Factory. I think in West London. I don't even know if it's still there. I only wanted to play there because Mark Nevin from Fairground Attraction played there, and I went to see him. And I love that band, Fairground Attraction. That's my entire childhood. And I got to speak to Mark Nevin, and I sent him some of my songs that weren't even recorded properly. They were recorded on my phone. And he said that I was a great songwriter. So I was like, right, I want to go play at the Chocolate Factory. And I remember talking to the guy who ran it, who I can't even remember his name now. And I met him at the bar. Like, as in, like, I saw him at the bar. I walked up to him and I said, hi, I want to play here. And he said, do you have any stuff online? I went, no. I said, but I'm good. And he said, well, you must be if you've come up to me to ask for a gig. And I felt like when him saying that kind of proved that to myself that, well, I must believe in myself because I'm going up to someone who I don't know, who owns a venue, and saying, I want to play here. And he did. He gave me a gig, actually. And I still got photos of that, and I loved it. But it kind of showed me that if I believed in my music, and I believed in my voice, and I believed in the songs that I was writing, then that meant that I could do this anywhere. And that meant that ultimately I would then start to meet people who believed in me back. Does that make sense? It's almost like I don't believe in this. I don't believe in this comment at all. But I just had this quote even. But I just had this feeling that if I went out there with this energy of like, yeah, you should be hiring me. Yeah, you should be booking me because I'm really great. Then people would go, sure. And then they would see for themselves, oh, she's a great performer. She's really good with the audience. She's really warm. She's really authentic. She's got a powerful voice. We like this. But what transpired, I realized, was everyone as it went on, and I was doing more open mics, and then I was getting gigs and things like that. What transpired was, because the most of the places that were owned and ran were by men, men on the whole did not like my self-esteem, because it became really apparent going to lots of different gigs, and especially like years later, like doing things after like the Me Too movement, where suddenly like women in music became a thing, and you know, people pretended to care about women in music, and there were more gigs based around women performing. It became really apparent that there's just a type of woman that is acceptable in the music scene, and I was not it. Being someone who loved their music and loved performing and loved their voice. Like, I love my voice, I love performing, I love being on stage and performing live. It's like such a great feeling. That's why I love busking. But that is not considered the right kind of woman, because we still, and I think people, not me, but people very much around me still, and to this day, still believe that as a woman, I need to do what I need to do almost apologetically. Like, I need to kind of tuck my hair behind my ears and go, you know, I hope you like it, before launching into a song. I got the impression from seeing other women perform that they performed with this almost, I really hope you like me vibe. Whereas I would go on stage and be like, I don't really care if you do or not don't. I'm just really excited to be here. I don't care, because I've never really cared about what audiences think, because I know that the general public, you know, there aren't many people who I've met in my life who have thought for themselves or questioned things. So it became really important to me to just be really, really, really confident and really like care about what I was presenting as for myself, rather than what I would look like to other people. Because at the end of the day, however I perform, no matter what songs I write, no matter what I sing, people are going to have a problem with me. And there are people who are just going to love what I do. And I just thought, well, because I can't control any of that, I just need to focus on what I can do. And as it went on, I had a friend who was managing me, and he was leading me to do stuff that I didn't really want to do, but I felt like I had to in order to get through kind of like the shit quagmire of grassroots shit, to get to a more established place of doing music where, I was part of a publishing house, or I was part of a label, or I was part of some sort of group that would allow me to have more um, more elite jobs in music. And it just wasn't happening. And there were so many things on the way that happened. Like, there was a TV producer who told my manager after a gig, he didn't even mention the fact that the audience loved it. He just said to my manager, well, she needs to lose a bit of weight, and she's got short hair. She needs to grow that out. No one likes that dyke look. And there were other comments about, she can't sing that song, Ain't Man Enough. It's just really sexist towards men. And I'm thinking back then, like, that song was back in 2012, 13, which I still sing to this day. And now we've got songs like Man Child by Sabrina Carpenter in the charts. And, all the women today who write songs about how horrible the men they've dated have been. Now it's like a trend. Whereas before, back then, I was considered some man-hating, bitter woman. And I was like, well, not really. but that's how much I've, observed and seen it change. So it became harder and harder for me to perform, because I was expected to change so much of myself, and I couldn't really understand it, because I thought, well, it's interesting that when I perform for the first time anywhere, people love it. They have no, like, audiences love it. They have no notes. They just go, that was really great. That was really powerful. But the people who were in control of my next moves, of like whether I got booked again, or whether I got booked to a bigger venue, or whether I could have that meeting with that A&R guy, they were the ones that had the issue with the contents of my songs, or how I looked, which I thought was so interesting, because I couldn't understand why, to an audience that were there and paying tickets to see me, or giving me money when I was busking, they had no problem investing in me as who I was right there and then. But every single man and woman who was at a who was in a position of authority and power did. And I started over the years thinking, well, this isn't actually about my talent then. This is about how malleable I am. This is about whether they can control me. This is about whether they can tell me to do something if I do it. This is about them saying jump and me saying how high. And I have never been a person who's done that. I used to be an actor, and it's a very different environment going into a place where you are working on a show and you are working in character development with other actors, and you are trying to create something for an audience. But that's because you are working in collaboration with many, many people to bring a story to life. And even then, if I wasn't comfortable with something, if I was not comfortable with doing something, I'd be like, I don't want to do that. It wasn't always heard, and my wishes weren't always respected, even in uni, but I would voice it. So I've never been someone that just goes, okay, that sounds really awful, I'll do it, because it will guarantee the next step. Because I kind of had this idea, and I kind of knew that it was a test, that it was a test of my loyalty to them. And I realized I was feeling torn between a test of my loyalty to me and how I was feeling and how my body was feeling and how it was making my mind feel, and a test of loyalty to these people who I didn't know, I had no guarantee that they would look after me or care about me. And remember, having no family, having no familial support during all of this meant that I was making these decisions primarily on my own, or around the next best people around me, which were people I was either working with at the time, or musicians I'd met, and I couldn't really trust any of these people, because not one person ever asked me, well, what do you want? It just didn't exist. And I do think that, for me personally, I had this idea. this is I had this idea when I started doing music. I really thought, if I could just get rich and famous, it means that everything bad that happened to me growing up will just be a bad dream. I won't have to justify myself to people. I won't have to prove my worth anymore. People will not hear about me, or meet me and hear about my background or hear about all the things that happened and go, well, she's a broken person. And it's because at the time I valued money and being prolific in the public eye, being well known in the public eye, as like the highest you can get in terms of acceptability to everyone else. And now looking at it, I'm realizing that what I was actually doing was avoiding looking at how I saw myself when I was alone in my room or alone at home, without friends, without family around me. And I realized that I was really struggling to come home from gigs, come home from music events that I played at, and like who I was without that, without the adoration from an audience. And then when I started really honing in on, like, I don't want to do that anymore, like, or questioning things, like why, like, one venue were making money out of my events, and I had to prove that I could sell out, so I sold out. And then the next event, they wanted another one. And I said, right, well, I want a cut of the ticket money this time. I want half. Like, I started to really be like, no, I want half now, because you're making money and I'm making all the effort online. Venues don't do any promo for artists. In fact, most of them try and get artists to pay them to be there. And that was when things started going downhill, like with these contacts where I was doing gigs and stuff, because I was demanding for the exact same thing they were getting for doing all of the work. That's when I started being framed as difficult, or pushy, or um, like, one place just thought I was a complete slut. They actually called me that name because I had dared to go into that venue and just ask for a gig as a solo woman without some man next to me. And that was another thing that happened as well, because I am someone who has no family, and I am someone who does this all alone. I walk into venues on my own, I walked into open mics on my own, I don't have anyone around me. The first thing that men think of me is, she must be a goer. She must be someone who sleeps around, because what kind of woman comes into these kind of situations solo and single without trying to sleep her way to the top? That was really hard, because I've never done that. And quite frankly, regardless of any, dalliances I had, they're not the focus of my life. Music is. It always has been. And that was very difficult. But when you're dealing with a misogynist society, a misogynist people who aren't even aware of their own misogyny and sexism, that's what became apparent to me. I was like, oh, I'm dealing with like something that's not invisible to me, but invisible to these people. So, and that's when I kind of just stopped. I just started to really pull back. And then 2016, I had what I can only describe as a complete breakdown. Um, I just mentally, I couldn't do anything. I was struggling so hard, and I'd been doing therapy, and it'd been very difficult. Therapy had been so difficult because they were getting me to do some really difficult things, which was necessary, but so hard. Again, with no support. Uh, my manager at the time just washed his hands off me, because I guess I wasn't performing the way I was meant to. Um, and you know, it was just a very, very, very difficult time. And when I shared this online, bearing in mind that I'd been sharing like quite a lot of my music stuff on Facebook and Instagram, I had fans saying, you're going to be a big star, you're going to make it big, it's going to be amazing. You need someone to give you your big break. That was it. That was a comment that I got a lot from people. Someone's going to give you your big break, and you're just going to soar. So I felt like I had to keep doing these things, or these gigs, or supporting this man who was horrible to me, because like I had fans who had expectations of me now. And then when I began to talk about it online, especially when I was being stalked, when I was busking full time on the South Bank, the amount of hateful vitriol I got my way simply for stating what was happening to me and how I felt about it from fans was so disheartening that I really started to see, like, holy crap, like, these people don't care about me at all. Like, these fans, these so-called fans, these people who've bought my CDs in the past, like, really the majority of them just don't give a shit about me at all. They actually don't care about me. In fact, they expect me to tolerate all this, like, sexual abuse and sexual harassment and these threats, so that I can be a big star, and then they can turn around and go, hey, you know, I knew her before she blew up. Like, I see the comments on YouTube videos and Instagram. When I remember seeing them when they were like back in 2011, it was a small venue. It's so amazing to see that they've blown up. Like, people are more obsessed with the idea of being attached to someone rich and famous or well known than they are about that person's safety or their health. And that's crazy, just how incredibly materialistic and shallow people are, really. And I've never really cared, and I just wanted to do what I love doing with as little harm as possible, because I don't believe it's my birthright to be abused for doing what I love doing. I don't believe that for a second. I know that there are so many people over the years, feels like thousands and thousands of men and women saying to me, "What do you expect? You're a woman. What do you expect? Men are like this." And that's another thing I couldn't understand. Men are like this, but not that man who got angry when I talked about it. Oh, it's not all men, but it's men. It was just getting so bad in terms of how people were presenting these double standards, but also like contradicting themselves constantly. It was just nuts to watch it happen, to witness it. And it was the beginning of the end, really, for me, because I realized that listening to what my fans wanted for me was actually harming me, because I wasn't listening to what I needed, which was safety and stability. And I can go into more details about what actually happened. That'll be another video. But I'm specifically talking about, like, well, I'll never be rich and famous, because I'm not somebody who can swallow abuse, horrible comments, terrible behavior towards me or towards other people. I don't believe that that is someone, or I don't believe institutions that run like that care about music or talent. They care about money and profit. And I get that people need to eat. Everyone needs to eat and pay bills and pay rent. And, like, no offense, but, like, everyone has to do that. That is the world we live in. But when it gets to a point where people are being exploited, where people are being abused, where people are suffering so poorly mentally because of how people choose to behave towards them in a horrible, abusive manner, that's unnecessary. That's completely unnecessary. And it became really obvious that I was just totally, I'm totally done with, like in my last video where I said, why don't I make music the same way anymore? It's because I have totally accepted that I am not somebody that would ever get to that level of notoriety, because I'm not interested in becoming a different person to do it. I'm not interested in squeezing myself into tiny crevices for other people, people telling me to do that in order for me to fit in with them for a bit. Because if I know anything, I know that people change their mind like that. So you'll change, I would do it, and then the goalpost would get moved. Well, now you've done that, you know. And it happened with men and bookers everywhere. I put out that one little comment that they made about my outfit. Next time I saw them, they slapped me on the ass. I didn't say anything about that, told my manager about it. He told me, well, it's just what happens. Next thing I know, that same guy throttles me around the throat at a gig. So it just escalates. So I knew that the less I tolerated, the less jobs I would get, the less bookings I would get. And when I called it out publicly, I got more hateful vitriol. I got men telling me that they were blacklisting me. I got women telling me that I was being awful. I was an awful representation of women, and how I was thinking men were all bad. And I was like, well, I haven't met one who's good yet. So, you know, if I haven't met any men in this industry or in this scene that has actually shown me that you can be a professional and treat me like I'm a human with a talent to give, then yeah, I'm going to assume it's all because all have done the opposite of compassion, you know? So that's why. And that's pretty much this video for now. But right now, living as I live now, I'm just sipping some hot water and lemon because I've got a slight cold and I do have to go busking. Hang on, excuse me. Ooh, it's gone cold. Ugh. But my life is more peaceful since I've really stopped caring about everybody who has no interest in my safety and stability. I will say that. My life is more peaceful. My nervous system is not constantly being jolted and pushed around. And I think I made a conscious decision to not interact with men and women who drain my energy. And because I am now more than ever more acutely aware of who's wasting my time and who's trying to get something out of me, who's trying to waste my time and energy online or off. And I've gotten very good at being like, I'm going, bye. No thanks, no thanks. Because I've gotten good at that, it means that when I record my music, when I play my music, when I'm performing, when I'm busking, I feel more grounded than I ever did when I was performing all the time, like from like 2012 to 2017. I feel more grounded. I definitely feel more calm. And my Patreon allows me to record and present myself in the way that I've always wanted to, and to people who actually care about it. So it does feel much better to be this kind of person than to have been the person I was before, who was like frantically trying to do whatever everyone was telling me to, because I just felt it was really important. Like if I want to actually be a musician, I've got to do this. Like it was awful. And I do not envy people who are famous. I don't envy it because of how much I know they have to mask, how much they have to tolerate to keep being there. It's not great. Anyway, that was this, and my next video, I have a few subjects I'm gonna go on to, but that was mine today. And I hope wherever you are, it's warm because it's freezing here. And if you want to support my music, I share new music every month and also do deep dives into how I've learnt to produce and other much more private matters I share on Patreon than social media, because again, like, social media is just this free buffet for anybody to just pile in and say whatever and do whatever. And I just think, well, that's another way of protecting my music and protecting my energy and protecting my mental health, is that I only want to share that with people who have similar values to me. And my Patreon's a great way to support me on that. And yeah, so thank you very much for listening if you have and gotten all the way through, which I really appreciate. And yeah, I shall see you next time.